I sat at the head of the table, the same spot I'd claimed for 30 years. Ever since I built this house with my own hands and a heart full of dreams. The dining room smelled of rosemary and roasted lamb. But the warmth of the meal couldn't mask the chill in the air. My family surrounded Mimi's son, David, his wife, Claire, their 2 teenage kids, Emma and Noah, and my sister, Margaret, who'd flown in from Chicago. The chandelier above us cast a soft glow, but it did little to soften the tension. Claire's sharp voice cut through the clinking of silverware. Honestly, George, you're such a pest. Always meddling in our lives. Her words landed like a slap, and the room fell silent. I felt the weight of every eye on me, waiting for my reaction. I sipped my wine, letting the bitter taste linger, and smiled. She had no idea who she was talking to. Not yet. I've always been a quiet man. Not because I lack words, but because I choose them carefully. Growing up dirt poor in a small Iowa town taught me that silence is a weapon, sharper than any blade. My father was a drunk. My mother a ghost who faded under his fists. I clawed my way out, built a real estate empire from nothing. And now, at 65, I was worth $60 million. But I never flaunted it. I wore flannel shirts, drove a beat-up truck, and lived modestly in this old house. To Claire, I was just her annoying father-in-law, always hovering over her perfect little family. She didn't know the truth, and I kept it that way for a reason. But tonight, her words lit a fuse I'd buried long ago. David shifted uncomfortably, his fork scraping against his plate. Claire, come on, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. He was my son, but he'd always been weak, bending to her will. Emma and Noah stared at their plates, their teenage awkwardness amplified by the tension. Margaret, though, met my gaze, her eyes glinting with that old fire. She knew what was coming. She'd seen me at my worst, back when I was young and hungry, ready to burn the world down to get what I wanted. Claire leaned back, smirking, oblivious to the storm brewing. What's wrong, George? Keck out your tongue, she taunted. I set my glass down, the clink echoing like a gavel. I'd spent years watching Claire. She was cunning, always angling for control. When David married her 10 years ago, I saw the ambition in her eyes. She thought she'd married into a modest family, one she could dominate. She pushed David to quit his teaching job for a corporate gig, moved them into a flashy house I secretly paid for, and treated me like a nuisance who didn't belong in their polished world. I let her believe it. I let her think I was just a retired carpenter with a small pension. But every slight, every barbed comment, was a brick in the wall of my patience. And tonight, that wall was crumbling. Claire, I said, my voice low, steady. You've got a sharp tongue. Always have. But you don't know half of what you think you do. Her smirk faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. You think I'm a pest because I ask about your day, because I show up to Emma's soccer games or Noah's science fairs. You think I'm meddling when I offer to fix the leak in your roof. But let me tell you something. This family, this house, every dime you've spent, it's all because of me. She laughed. A short, brittle sound. Oh, please, George. Don't start with the "I built this family" nonsense. You're a retired nobody who can't let go. David winced, but he didn't defend me. Emma whispered something to Noah, and Margaret's hand tightened around her wine glass. I felt the old anger stir, the kind that used to drive me when I was young, when I'd sworn I'd never let anyone walk over me again. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Ain't nobody," I said, my voice rising just enough to make her flinch. "You're sitting at my table, eating my food, in a house I own outright. And you have the nerve to call me a pest." Claire's face flushed, but she doubled down. "Your table. This is David's house now. You're just lingering." That word lingering cut deeper than she knew. It reminded me of my mother, how she'd lingered in a life that crushed her. I'd promised myself I'd never be that weak. I walked to the sideboard, pulled open a drawer, and took out a folder I'd kept hidden for years. The room watched in silence as I dropped it on the table, the thud heavy with meaning. "Open it," I said to Claire. She hesitated, her confidence cracking, then flipped it open. Bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios all in my name. Her eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. $60 million, I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. That's what I'm worth. Every cent you've spent, every vacation, every car, every tuition payment for Emma and Noah hit came from me. Not David. Me. Claire's mouth opened, but no words came out. David stared at me, his face pale, like he was seeing me for the first time. Emma and Noah looked confused, their eyes darting between us. Margaret leaned back, a faint smile on her lips. She'd always known. "You thought I was a pest," I continued, "but you've been living off my money while spitting in my face. And I let you, because I wanted to believe you'd change. But I'm done." The room felt like it was holding its breath. Claire's hands trembled as she closed the folder. "George, I didn't know," she stammered. "Didn't know?" I snapped. "You didn't care. You've spent years treating me like dirt, thinking I was nothing. And David, you let her." My son's head dropped, shame written across his face. I turned back to Claire. "You want to talk about meddling? Let's talk about the affair you've been hiding for 2 years. The words landed like a bomb. Claire froze, her face draining of color. David's head snapped up, his eyes wide with betrayal. The kids gasped, and Margaret's smile vanished. I hadn't planned to go there. Not tonight. But Claire's arrogance had pushed me too far. I'd known about her affair for months, thanks to a private investigator I'd hired on a hunch. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence was undeniable: texts, hotel receipts, late-night calls. I kept it to myself, hoping she'd come clean, hoping she'd prove me wrong about her. But she hadn't. And now, with her calling me a pest in front of my family, I was done holding back. "George, that's not," Claire started, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me. Not now. I've got proof, and I'm not afraid to use it." The room spun with the weight of my words, and I knew there was no going back. David's voice broke the silence, raw and trembling. "Dad, what are you talking about?" His eyes were on Claire, searching for a denial, but she wouldn't meet his gaze. She stared at the folder, her hand still clutching it, as if it could shield her from the truth. I felt a pang of guilt for my son, but it was drowned out by the fire in my chest. I'd spent too long protecting people who didn't deserve it. "Ask your wife," I said, my tone softer but no less firm. Ask her about the late nights at work, the weekends away for conferences. Ask her about Michael. The name hit like a lightning bolt. Claire's head jerked up, her eyes wild with panic. David turned to her, his face a mix of confusion and dread. Michael, your coworker? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Claire's lips moved, but no sound came out. She was cornered, and she knew it. I could see the calculations running behind her eyes, searching for a way out. This is ridiculous, she finally said, her voice shaking. You're making things up, George. You're trying to tear us apart. But her words lacked conviction, and David wasn't buying it. Is it true? He pressed, leaning toward her. Emma and Noah sat frozen, their eyes wide, too young to fully grasp the wreckage unfolding, but old enough to feel its weight. Margaret's silence was louder than any word. She'd always distrusted Claire, and now her instincts were vindicated. I walked back to my chair, but didn't sit. I stood tall, letting the moment stretch, letting Claire feel the walls closing in. I didn't want to do this here, I said, addressing the room, but looking at her. I wanted to believe you were good for this family. Claire, I gave you every chance to prove it. But you've been lying to my son, to my grandkids, to all of us. And I'm not going to let you destroy what I've built. David's face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw the boy he used to be scared, lost, looking to me for answers. I hated that I had to be the one to break him, but I wasn't going to let Claire's betrayal bury this family. Dad, David said, his voice cracking. How long have you known? I sighed, the weight of the truth settling on my shoulders. Long enough. I hired someone to look into it. I didn't want to believe it, but the proof was there. Pictures, messages, receipts. It's all in another folder, if you want to see it. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. You spied on me, she shouted, her composure shattering. You had no right. I laughed. A cold, bitter sound. No right. You're sleeping with another man while living off my money. And you want to talk about rights. You've got some nerve. The kids were crying now, soft sobs that cut through the shouting. Emma reached for Noah's hand under the table, and my heart ached for them. They didn't deserve this. But I couldn't stop now. The truth was out, and it was a wildfire, burning through years of lies. David stood, his chair tipping over with a crash. Claire, tell me it's not true, he demanded, his voice raw with desperation. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It's not what you think, she said, but the words were hollow. She reached for his arm, but he pulled away, his face twisting with pain. Margaret finally spoke, her voice calm but cutting. You've got a lot to answer for, Claire. George gave you everything, and this is how you repay him. Claire turned on her, her face a mask of fury. Oh, don't act so high and mighty, Margaret. You've always hated me. You're just jealous because I'm part of this family and you're not. Margaret's eyes narrowed, but she didn't take the bait. I'm family by blood, she said. You're just a guest who overstayed her welcome. The word stung, and Claire flinched as if slapped. I could see her unraveling, the perfect facade she'd built crumbling under the weight of her own choices. I sat down, suddenly tired. The anger that had fueled me was fading, replaced by a heavy sadness. I'd wanted revenge. Yes. But not like this, not with my grandkids crying and my son broken. Claire, I said, my voice quieter now. You have two choices. You can come clean. Right here. Right now. And maybe we can find a way to move forward. Or you can keep lying. And I'll make sure you lose everything. The room was silent again, save for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Claire's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. But there was none. She was trapped. Not just by me, but by her own actions. Fine, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's true. David let out a choked sob, and Emma's crying grew louder. Noah buried his face in his hands. Claire's confession hung in the air, heavy and final. It started 2 years ago. She continued, her voice shaking. Michael, he was there when I felt alone. David was always working. And I made a mistake. A mistake. The word felt like a mockery of the pain she'd caused. David stared at her, his eyes hollow. A mistake. He repeated. 2 years. Claire. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I watched my son, my heart breaking for him. I'd wanted to protect him, to shield him from this. But I'd failed. Maybe I'd failed him long before tonight. By staying silent. By letting Claire's poison seep into our family. But I wasn't going to fail him now. David, I said, whatever happens next, you're not alone. You've got me. Margaret. The kids. We're your family. He nodded, but his eyes were distant, lost in the wreckage of his marriage. Claire reached for him again, but he stepped back, shaking his head. Don't, he said. Just don't. The dinner was over. The food cold. The table a battlefield. I looked at my family, fractured but not broken, and felt a flicker of hope. This was the start of something, not the end. Claire's betrayal had torn us apart, but it had also exposed the truth. And maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild from here. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't done fighting for this family. Not by a long shot. The silence after Claire's confession was suffocating, like the air had been sucked out of the room. The chandelier's light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the table. Emma's sobs had quieted to hiccups, and Noah sat rigid, his fists clenched. David stood by the window, staring out into the dark, his back to us all. I wanted to go to him, to pull him back from whatever abyss he was falling into. But I knew he needed time. Claire's head was bowed, her hands twisting the napkin in her lap. She looked small, diminished. Nothing like the confident woman who'd called me a pest an hour ago. Margaret sipped her wine, her eyes never leaving Claire, like a hawk watching wounded prey. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of what I'd done settling over me. Exposing Claire had felt righteous in the moment. But now, with my grandkids trembling and my son shattered, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Revenge had a price, and I was paying it alongside everyone else. But I couldn't undo it now. The truth was out, raw and bleeding, and we had to face it. Claire, I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. You need to leave. Not forever, but tonight. Give David some space. She looked up, her eyes red and desperate. George, please, don't do this. I can fix it. David turned, his face hard. Fix it. He spat. You've been lying to me for 2 years. You think you can just fix that? His voice cracked, and I saw the boy I'd raised. The one who'd cried when his goldfish died. The one who'd clung to me after his mother passed. Claire reached for him again, but he stepped back, shaking his head. No. Claire. Dad's right. You need to go. Emma let out a small, anguished sound, and Noah's jaw tightened. I hated this for them. Hated that they had to witness their family unraveling. But sometimes, the only way to heal is to cut out the rot. Claire stood, her movements jerky, like a puppet with cut strings. I'll go, she whispered. But this isn't over. I'm not giving up on us. She looked at David, then at the kids, her eyes pleading. They didn't look back. She grabbed her purse and walked out, the front door closing with a soft thud that echoed like a gunshot. The room felt emptier without her, but also lighter, like a storm had passed. David sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Emma climbed into his lap, wrapping her arms around him, and Noah leaned against his shoulder. For a moment, they were just a father and his kids, holding on to each other in the wreckage. Margaret broke the silence. You did the right thing, George. Her voice was firm, but there was a softness in her eyes, a rare glimpse of the sister who'd bandaged my scraped knees when we were kids. I nodded, but I wasn't so sure. Right or wrong, I'd changed everything. What happens now? Noah asked, his voice small but steady. I looked at him, this boy who was growing into a man faster than I wanted. Now, I said, we figure out how to move forward. Together. David lifted his head, his eyes red but clear. Why didn't you tell me sooner, Dad? He asked. The question hit like a punch. I'd asked myself the same thing 100 times. I wanted to protect you, I said. I thought, maybe she'd stop. Maybe she'd choose you. Choose this family. I was wrong. He nodded, but there was no forgiveness in his eyes. Not yet. I didn't expect it. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. And I'd kept this from him for too long. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Margaret helped me clear the table, the uneaten food a reminder of the evening's collapse. The kids went to bed, their faces pale and drawn. David stayed in the dining room, staring at the folder I'd left on the table. I sat with him, not speaking, just being there. Sometimes, presence is all you can offer. Around midnight, he finally spoke. I don't know what to do, Dad, he said. I loved her. I still do. I put a hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight of his pain. I know, I said. And that's the hardest part. But you're stronger than you think. You'll get through this. The next morning, the house felt different, like it was holding its breath. I made coffee, the routine grounding me. Margaret was already up, reading the paper at the kitchen table. You stirred up a hornet's nest last night, she said, not looking up. Had to be done, I replied, pouring her a cup. She nodded, but her eyes were troubled. Just be careful, George. Claire's not going to let this go quietly. I knew she was right. Claire was a fighter, and I'd humiliated her. She'd come back swinging, and I needed to be ready. David appeared in the doorway, his face haggard but determined. I'm taking the kids to school, he said. Then I'm going to talk to a lawyer. I nodded, pride and sorrow mixing in my chest. He was stepping up. Finally. But at what cost? I'm here, I said. Whatever you need. He gave me a small, tired smile. The first crack in the wall between us. After he left, I sat alone. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I thought about Claire. About the years I'd watched her manipulate and charm her way through our lives. I'd let her think she was in control. But now the game had changed. I spent the day sorting through old memories, pulling out photos of David as a boy, of his mother, of the life we'd built before Claire. I found a picture of us at the lake. David grinning with a fishing pole, his mother laughing beside him. I missed her, missed the simplicity of those days. But life doesn't let you go back. All you can do is face what's in front of you. And what was in front of me was a family on the brink, a son who needed me, and a daughter-in-law who'd underestimated me. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The days after the dinner felt like walking through a fog. The house was too quiet. The absence of Claire's sharp voice leaving a void that no one knew how to fill. David threw himself into work, staying late at the office, avoiding the questions that hung in the air. Emma and Noah tiptoed around him, their usual chatter replaced by hushed whispers. I tried to keep things normal, making breakfast, driving them to school, asking about their day, but normal was gone, shattered on that dining room floor. Margaret stayed for a week, her presence a steady anchor. But even she couldn't hide the strain in her eyes. You've opened a wound, George, she said one morning over coffee. Now you've got to help it heal. I knew she was right, but healing felt like a distant dream. Claire hadn't reached out since she left, but I knew she was out there, plotting, waiting. I'd humiliated her, stripped away her control. And women like Claire don't forgive easily. I spent my days going through the motions, checking on my investments, meeting with my accountant, making sure the empire I'd built stayed strong. But my mind was on David and the kids, on the family I'd fought so hard to protect. I wondered if I'd protected them or broken them further. A week later, David called me from his office. Dad, can we talk? His voice was tight, like he was holding something back. I drove to his downtown office, a sleek glass building that screamed Claire's influence. He met me in the lobby, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed. She wants to meet, he said, leading me to a quiet coffee shop nearby. Claire. She's been texting, saying she wants to explain, to make things right. I sat across from him, watching the way his hands fidgeted with his coffee cup. What do you want, David? I asked. He sighed, rubbing his face. I don't know. I'm angry. But she's still their mother. I don't want to lose everything. I leaned back, choosing my words carefully. You're not losing everything. You've got Emma, Noah, me. Claire's the one who threw it away, not you. He nodded, but doubt lingered in his eyes. I hated seeing him like this, torn between love and betrayal. Just be careful, I said. She's good at twisting things. Don't let her make you forget what she did. He gave me a small nod, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Claire had a hold on him, even now, and that worried me more than anything. That evening, I found Emma in the backyard, sitting on the old swing set I'd built when she was a toddler. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. Grandpa, she said as I sat beside her. Is Mom coming back? The question hit me like a knife. I wanted to lie, to tell her everything would be okay. But she deserved better. I don't know, sweetheart, I said. But whatever happens, you and Noah are loved. You've got your dad, me, Aunt Margaret. We're not going anywhere. She leaned against me, her small frame trembling, and I held her, wishing I could shield her from all of this. Noah was different. He bottled up his pain, hiding behind his video games and schoolwork. But I saw it in the way he avoided talking about Claire, in the way his shoulders tensed when her name came up. One night, I found him in the garage, tinkering with an old radio I'd given him. You okay, kid? I asked, leaning against the workbench. He shrugged, not looking up. Mom messed up, didn't she? He said, his voice flat. I nodded. Yeah, she did. But that's on her, not you. He fiddled with a screwdriver, his jaw tight. I just want things to go back to how they were. I put a hand on his shoulder. I know. But sometimes, things have to break before they can get better. Claire's call came a few days later. I was in my study, going over property deeds, when my phone buzzed. Her name on the screen sent a jolt through me. I answered, keeping my voice neutral. George, she said, her tone softer than I'd ever heard it. We need to talk. Please. I agreed to meet her at a park near the house, a neutral place where neither of us had the upper hand. When I arrived, she was sitting on a bench, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back. She looked tired, vulnerable, but I wasn't fooled. Claire was a performer, and this was just another act. I'm sorry, she said as I sat down. For everything. I didn't mean to hurt David or the kids. I was lost. Her eyes welled up, but I kept my face blank. You weren't lost, Claire. You made choices. You chose to lie, to cheat, to treat me like I was nothing. She flinched, but I didn't stop. You thought you could control this family, but you underestimated me. And now you've lost. She shook her head, tears falling. I don't want to lose them, George. I'll do anything to fix this. I studied her, searching for the truth behind her words. Part of me wanted to believe she could change, that she could redeem herself for David and the kids. But I'd seen too much, known her too long. You want to fix this? I said. Start by being honest. With David. With yourself. Stop playing games. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I will. I promise. I stood, ready to leave. Words are cheap. Claire. Prove it. As I walked away, I felt her eyes on me, but I didn't look back. That night, I sat with David and told him about the meeting. He listened, his face unreadable. What do you think? He asked. I think she's scared. I said. She's losing control, and she'll say whatever it takes to get it back. Be careful. He nodded, but I could see the hope in his eyes, the part of him that still loved her. I didn't push him. He had to find his own way through this. But I made a silent vow to protect him, to protect all of them, no matter what it took. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of rebuilding. David started therapy, a step I hadn't expected but respected. He wanted to be better for the kids, he said, and I saw a strength in him I hadn't seen in years. Emma and Noah settled into a new routine, spending more time at my house than their own. I cooked dinners, helped with homework, and listened when they needed to talk. It wasn't perfect, but it was something, a foundation we could build on. Claire stayed away, but her presence lingered, like a shadow we couldn't shake. David said she'd been texting, asking to see the kids, but he wasn't ready. Not yet. I spent my days reflecting on my own role in this mess. I'd kept my wealth a secret to protect my family, to keep them grounded. But maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe my silence had given Claire room to manipulate, to assume she was the one in control. I thought about my own past, the deals I'd made, the enemies I'd outsmarted to build my fortune. I'd been ruthless once, a young man driven by hunger and anger. But I'd changed, softened by love for my wife, my son, my grandkids. Or so I thought. That dinner had woken something in me, a reminder of the man I used to be. One afternoon, Noah came to me with a question that caught me off guard. "Grandpa, why didn't you tell us you were rich?" He was sitting on the porch, tossing a baseball between his hands. I leaned against the railing, choosing my words carefully. "I didn't want it to change you," I said. "Money does funny things to people. I wanted you and Emma to grow up knowing hard work, not handouts." He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "But Mom, she wouldn't have treated you like that if she knew." I sighed. "Maybe. But if someone only respects you because of your money, their respect isn't worth having." Emma joined us, her hair tied back, her soccer cleats dangling from her hand. "Is Mom coming back?" she asked, her voice small. It was the same question she'd asked before, but this time, there was a hardness in her eyes, like she was bracing for the answer. "I don't know," I said, honest as always. "But whatever happens, you've got us. That's what matters." She nodded, but I could see the hurt lingering, a wound that would take time to heal. I made a mental note to talk to David about getting her into therapy too. The kids needed more than I could give them alone. Claire's next move came sooner than I expected. A letter arrived, addressed to me in her neat handwriting. I opened it in my study, the words blurring as I read. She apologized again, but this time, she laid out a plan. She was going to therapy, she said, working on herself. She wanted to see the kids, to rebuild trust with David. She acknowledged her mistakes, her affair, her arrogance. It was a good letter, carefully crafted, but I wasn't convinced. Claire was smart. She knew how to play the long game. I showed it to David, watching his face as he read. "What do you think?" I asked. He set the letter down, his jaw tight. "I don't know if I can trust her," he said. "But the kids miss her." We agreed to let Claire see Emma and Noah, but on our terms. A supervised visit at my house, with me and David present. The day arrived, and the tension was palpable. Claire walked in, her eyes downcast, her usual confidence gone. The kids ran to her, their hugs hesitant but real. I watched from the kitchen, my arms crossed, ready to step in if she crossed a line. She didn't. She played with them, listened to their stories, laughed at Noah's bad jokes. David watched too, his face a mix of hope and pain. When she left, Emma cried, and Noah went quiet. David walked her to the door, their conversation low and private. I didn't ask what they said. Some things were theirs alone. That night, David and I sat on the porch, the air cool and heavy with the scent of rain. "I don't know if I can forgive her," he said, staring at the stars. "But I want to try. For the kids." I nodded, understanding more than I could say. Forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, it was about choosing to move forward. "Whatever you decide," I said. "I'm with you. But don't let her hurt you again." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "You really think she can change?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "I don't know, David. But people can surprise you. Sometimes." The next week, I met with my lawyer to update my will. I'd been putting it off, but the dinner had changed things. I wanted to make sure Emma and Noah were taken care of, no matter what happened with Claire and David. I set up trust funds for them, accessible when they turned 25, with enough to give them freedom but not enough to ruin them. I left David the house, free and clear, and a chunk of my investments. Margaret got a share too, for all the years she'd stood by me. As for Claire, I left her nothing. If she wanted to be part of this family, she'd have to earn it the hard way. Life settled into a fragile rhythm. David started smiling again, small moments that felt like victories. Emma joined the school play, and Noah built a robot that won a science fair. I was proud of them, prouder than I'd ever been of my money. But I kept my guard up, waiting for Claire's next move. She was too quiet, too compliant. I'd learned long ago that silence from a woman like her meant she was planning something. And I wasn't about to let her catch me off guard again. Claire's visits became a regular thing. Once a week. Always supervised. She was on her best behavior, bringing homemade cookies, asking Emma about soccer, helping Noah with his math homework. It was almost convincing, the way she slipped back into the role of devoted mother. But I watched her closely, noting the way her eyes flickered when David spoke, the way her smile tightened when I entered the room. She was playing a part, and I wasn't sure if it was for the kids, for David, or for herself. David seemed to soften, though, his anger giving way to cautious hope. I wanted to believe in her redemption, for his sake, but my gut told me to stay sharp. One evening, after Claire left, David sat me down in the living room. The kids were upstairs, their laughter filtering through the ceiling, a sound that felt like a small miracle. "Dad," he said, his voice low, "I've been thinking about what you said at dinner. About the money. About everything. Why didn't you ever tell me?" I leaned back, the question stirring old memories. "I didn't want it to define you," I said. "I grew up with nothing, David. I saw what money did to people, how it twisted them, made them greedy or lazy. I wanted you to be better than that." He nodded, but his eyes were troubled. "But you let Claire think we were struggling. You let her treat you like you were less." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I thought it would keep her honest. If she thought we were just scraping by, maybe she'd show her true colors. And she did. David's jaw tightened, and I knew he was thinking about the affair. "I'm sorry," I said, the words heavy. "I should have told you sooner. About the money. About her. I thought I was protecting you. But maybe I just made it worse." He looked at me, his eyes softening. "You did what you thought was right. I get that. But from now on, no more secrets. Okay?" I nodded, a weight lifting off my chest. No more secrets, I promised. It was a start, a crack in the wall between us. But trust is a fragile thing, and we both knew it would take time to rebuild. I thought about my own father, how his lies had torn our family apart. I'd sworn I'd be different, and yet here I was, repeating his mistakes in my own way. Claire's next visit brought a surprise. She arrived with a manila envelope, her hands trembling as she handed it to David. "These are divorce papers," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "I'm not fighting you for anything. I just want to be part of the kids' lives." David stared at the envelope, his face unreadable. I stood in the doorway, watching, my heart pounding. It was a bold move, one I hadn't expected. Was this her redemption, or another calculated play? David opened the envelope, scanning the pages. "You're giving up everything?" he asked, his voice thick with disbelief. She nodded. "I don't deserve it. I know that now." The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over us. Emma and Noah were at a friend's house, spared from this moment, but I knew it would affect them too. David looked at me, searching for guidance, but I stayed quiet. This was his decision, not mine. "I need time to think," he said finally, setting the papers down. Claire nodded, her shoulders slumping. "Take all the time you need," she said. She left without another word, and I felt a strange mix of admiration and suspicion. She was giving up control, something I'd never seen her do. But why? That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my study, the divorce papers on my desk, a glass of whiskey in my hand. I thought about Claire, about her affair, her arrogance, her sudden humility. People could change. I knew that. I'd changed, hadn't I? From a scrappy kid with a chip on his shoulder to a man who'd built a life for his family. But change wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick. If Claire was serious, she'd have to prove it. Not just to David, but to all of us. I took a sip of whiskey, the burn grounding me. I'd spent too long fighting battles against my father, against the world, against Claire. Maybe it was time to fight for something instead. The next morning, I found David in the kitchen, the divorce papers spread out on the table. He looked up, his eyes tired but clear. "I'm going to sign them," he said. "But I'm not cutting her out of the kids' lives. They need her, even if I can't trust her." I nodded, proud of his clarity. "That's a good call," I said. "You're putting them first. That's what matters." He gave me a small smile, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were on the same side. I spent the day with Emma and Noah, taking them to the zoo, a rare treat that brought out their old spark. Emma laughed at the monkeys, and Noah rambled about animal facts he'd learned in school. I watched them, my heart full but heavy. They were the reason I'd kept my secrets, the reason I'd fought so hard. But I couldn't protect them from everything. Life was messy, painful, and they were learning that too young. As we drove home, Emma asked, "Grandpa, are you mad at Mom?" I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I was," I said. "But I'm trying to let that go. For you and Noah." She nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I want her to be okay," she said. "Me too," I said, and I meant it. When we got home, David was waiting, the signed divorce papers in his hand. "It's done," he said, his voice steady. I put a hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the moment. "You're going to be okay," I said. He nodded, and for the first time, I believed he would be. We weren't whole yet, but we were healing, one step at a time. The divorce papers marked a turning point, but not an end. Claire moved into a small apartment across town, a modest place that surprised me with its simplicity. She kept up her visits, always on time, always respectful. The kids warmed to her slowly, their hugs less hesitant, their smiles more genuine. David watched from a distance, his heart still raw but softening. I stayed on the sidelines, observing, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Claire's humility felt too perfect, too polished, like a painting with no visible brushstrokes. But the kids needed her, and I wasn't going to stand in their way. Not unless she gave me a reason. One evening, Emma came to me with a drawing she'd Medea family portrait. All of us together, including Claire. "Do you think we'll ever be like this again?" she asked, her voice small. I looked at the crayon lines, the smiling faces, and felt a lump in my throat. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said. "But we're a family. No matter what. We'll figure it out." She hugged me, her arms tight, and I held her close, wishing I could promise her the world. Noah was quieter, but I saw him watching Claire during her visits, his eyes sharp, like he was waiting for her to slip. He was like me, that way, slow to trust, quick to notice. David started dating again, small steps into a world he'd forgotten. He met a woman named Sarah, a teacher at Emma's school, kind and steady in a way Claire never was. I liked her, but I kept my distance, not wanting to meddle. He'd had enough of that. One night, he brought her to dinner at my house, and the kids took to her instantly. Emma showed her drawings, and Noah talked her ear off about his robot project. I watched from the kitchen, a strange mix of hope and sadness in my chest. This was what moving on looked like, but it meant letting go of the past, and that was harder than I'd expected. Claire's reaction to Sarah was telling. She showed up for her next visit, her smile tight, her eyes scanning the house like she was looking for evidence. "I heard David's seeing someone," she said, her tone casual but laced with something sharper. I nodded, stirring my coffee. "He is. She's good for him." Claire's jaw tightened, but she didn't push. Instead, she turned to the kids, her voice bright, almost desperate. "Who wants to bake cookies?" she asked, and they followed her to the kitchen, oblivious to the tension. I watched her, wondering if her redemption was real or if she was just biding her time. Margaret called me one afternoon, her voice sharp with concern. "George, I've been hearing things. Claire's been asking around about your finances." I frowned, setting down my newspaper. "What kind of things?" Margaret hesitated, then said, "She's been talking to some of David's old colleagues, fishing for details about your properties, your investments. She's subtle, but she's digging." My stomach tightened. I'd expected Claire to fight back, but this was bolder than I'd thought. "Thanks for the heads up," I said. "Keep your ears open." Margaret promised she would, and I hung up, my mind racing. I called my investigator, the same one who'd uncovered Claire's affair. "Look into Claire again," I told him. "I want to know what she's after." He got back to me a week later with a report that made my blood run cold. Claire had been meeting with a lawyer. Not about the divorce, but about my estate. She'd been asking questions about trusts, inheritance, anything she could use to get a piece of my fortune. It wasn't enough that I'd exposed her. She wanted to claw her way back, to take what she thought she deserved. I felt the old anger rising, but I pushed it down. This time, I'd be smarter. I confronted Claire at her next visit, waiting until the kids were upstairs. David was at work, and it was just the two of us in the living room. "What are you playing at, Claire?" I asked, my voice low. She froze, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "What are you talking about?" I stepped closer, holding up the investigator's report. "You've been digging into my money, asking about my estate. Don't lie to me." Her face paled, but she didn't back down. "I just want to make sure the kids are taken care of," she said. "You can't blame me for that." I laughed. A cold, humorless sound. "The kids are taken care of. You're the one who's not. And you never will be. Not by me." Her eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her voice steady. "You can't keep me out of this family, George. I'm their mother." I leaned in, my voice a whisper. "You're their mother, but you're not my family. Cross me again, and you'll regret it." She held my gaze, then looked away, her hands trembling. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, and it felt like a small victory. I told David about the report that night, showing him the evidence. He read it in silence, his face hardening with every page. "I thought she was changing," he said, his voice thick with disappointment. I wanted to believe it. I put a hand on his arm. "I know. But people like Claire don't change overnight. Maybe someday, but not now." He nodded, his eyes distant. "I'm done giving her chances," he said. "The kids can see her, but that's it." I felt a surge of pride. He was finally standing up, not just for himself, but for his family. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about justice, about loyalty, about the cost of revenge. I'd won this round, but the fight wasn't over. Claire was still out there, and I knew she wouldn't stop. But neither would I. This family was mine, and I'd protect it with everything I had. The air in the house felt lighter after David's decision, like a storm had passed and left clear skies behind. Emma and Noah seemed to sense it too, their laughter louder, their steps lighter. David threw himself into being a father, taking them to soccer games, helping with homework, even planning a camping trip, something he hadn't done since they were little. Sarah was around more, her quiet presence a balm for the wounds Claire had left. I watched it all from the sidelines, proud but cautious. Claire was still a wild card, and I wasn't about to let my guard down. One afternoon, I got a call from my accountant, a gruff man named Tom who'd been with me for 20 years. "George, someone's been poking around your accounts," he said. "Nothing illegal. Just inquiries, credit checks, property records. Looks like it's coming from a law firm." My grip tightened on the phone. "Claire." I thanked Tom and called my investigator again, asking for a deeper dive. The report came back faster this time. Claire had hired a new lawyer, one known for taking on messy estate battles. She wasn't just fishing, she was building a case. I didn't tell David right away. He was finally finding his footing, and I didn't want to drag him back into the mess. Instead, I met with my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Linda who'd helped me protect my assets for years. She's got no claim, Linda said, flipping through the investigator's report. The divorce papers are ironclad, and your will is airtight. But she could make trouble drag it out. Make it public. You need to decide how far you're willing to go. I leaned back, my mind racing. I didn't want a war. Not with the kids caught in the crossfire. But I wasn't going to let Claire take what I'd built. I decided to confront her again, this time on my terms. I invited her to the house, saying it was about the kids' schedules. She arrived looking polished, her confidence back in place. I waited until we were alone in my study. The door closed. I know what you're doing, I said, tossing the new report on the desk. You're trying to get your hands on my money. It's not going to happen. Her face didn't change, but her eyes flickered, just for a second. I don't know what you mean, she said, her voice smooth. I'm just trying to be a good mother. I stepped closer, my voice low. Don't play innocent with me, Claire. I've got proof, and I've got lawyers who'll bury you. You want to fight dirty. I invented dirty. She held my gaze, but I saw the crack in her armor, the slight tremble in her hands. You're wrong about me, George, she said. I've changed. I shook my head. You don't change, Claire. You adapt. There's a difference. She stood, her face hard. This isn't over, she said, and walked out. I watched her go, knowing I'd just lit a match in a room full of gasoline. I told David everything that night, showing him the report, the lawyer's name, the inquiries. He listened in silence, his face pale. She's never going to stop, is she? He said, more to himself than to me. I shook my head. Not unless we make her. He looked at me, his eyes searching. What do we do? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. We protect what's ours. The kids. This family. Everything I've built. We don't let her win. David nodded, a fire in his eyes I hadn't seen before. I'm in, he said. No more games. We spent the next hour strategizing, laying out a plan to shield the kids and the estate. Linda would file injunctions, freeze any attempts Claire made to dig deeper. My investigator would keep tabs on her, watching for any new moves. It felt like preparing for war. But this time, David was by my side, not against me. It was a small victory, but it meant everything. The kids noticed the shift, even if they didn't know the details. Emma started asking questions about Claire, her voice cautious but curious. Is Mom in trouble? She asked one night, helping me wash dishes. I dried a plate, choosing my words carefully. Your mom's made some bad choices, I said, but we're handling it. You don't need to worry. She nodded, but her eyes were older than her years, and I hated that she had to carry this. Noah was quieter, but I caught him watching me, like he was trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. Sarah became a steady presence, joining us for family dinners, helping the kids with projects. She didn't push, didn't try to replace Claire, but her warmth filled a void. One night, she pulled me aside, her eyes serious. David told me about Claire, she said. I just want you to know I'm here. For all of you. I nodded, grateful for her steadiness. You're good for them, I said. Don't let Claire scare you off. She smiled, a quiet strength in her eyes. I'm not going anywhere. As the weeks passed, I felt the family knitting itself back together, stronger in the broken places. But Claire was still out there, a shadow on the horizon. I knew she was planning something, and I was ready. I'd spent my life building this family, and I wasn't about to let her tear it down. Not now. Not ever. Claire's next move came in the form of a letter, delivered by courier to my doorstep. It was from her lawyer, a formal demand for a meeting to discuss family assets. The language was careful, but the intent was clear. She was coming for my money, claiming it was for the kids' future. I read it in my study, the words blurring with my anger. She hadn't changed, just gotten smarter, hiding her greed behind a mask of maternal concern. I called Linda immediately, and she laughed. A sharp, confident sound. She's got nothing. George, this is a bluff. Let me handle it. I trusted her, but the audacity of it burned. Claire wasn't just fighting Mesh, was trying to rewrite the story, make herself the victim. I showed the letter to David, watching his face as he read. His jaw tightened, but his eyes were steady. She's not getting a dime, he said, his voice firm. I nodded, proud of the man he was becoming. We'll shut this down, I said, but we need to be ready for her to escalate. David agreed, and we spent the evening going over our defense's legal documents, financial records, everything Linda would need to crush Claire's claim. It felt good to have him with me, not just as my son, but as a partner in this fight. The kids were starting to thrive again, their resilience a quiet miracle. Emma made the varsity soccer team, her confidence growing with every goal she scored. Noah built a drone for a school project, his focus intense, like he was pouring all his pain into creating something new. I watched them, my heart swelling with pride. But I couldn't shake the fear that Claire's next move would hurt them most. I doubled down on my vigilance, checking in with my investigator weekly, making sure my accounts were secure. I wasn't just protecting my money, I was protecting their future, their sense of safety. Claire requested another meeting, this time through David. She wanted to talk about the kids, she said, but I knew better. We agreed to meet at a neutral spot, a quiet cafe downtown. She arrived alone, her lawyer nowhere in sight, which surprised me. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed, but her posture was defiant. I'm not here to fight, she said, her voice low. I just want what's best for Emma and Noah. I leaned back, my arms crossed. Then why the letter? Why the lawyer sniffing around my money? She flinched, but didn't deny it. I was trying to secure their future, she said. You've got so much, George. Why can't you share it? I laughed, a bitter sound. Share it. After what you did. You don't get to play the martyr. Claire. You cheated. You lied. You treated me like garbage. And now you think you're entitled to my money because you're their mother. Her eyes flashed, but she kept her voice calm. I've made mistakes, George. I'm trying to make up for them. Can't you see that? I studied her, searching for the truth. Part of me wanted to believe she was sincere, but I'd been burned too many times. Prove it, I said. Drop the legal threats. Stop digging into my finances. Be a mother, not a schemer. She nodded, but her eyes were unreadable, and I knew this wasn't the end. David was waiting at home, his face anxious. I told him about the meeting, leaving out nothing. She's not going to stop, he said, echoing my thoughts. I nodded. But we're ready for her. She's not getting near what's ours. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. Why do you fight so hard, Dad? The money. The secrets it's caused so much pain. Why not just let it go? I sighed, the weight of his words settling over me. It's not about the money, I said. It's about what it represents. I built this for you. For the kids. For a future where you'd never have to struggle like I did. I can't let her take that away. He nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. I get it, he said. But maybe it's time to let us in. Share the burden. It was a simple request, but it hit me hard. I'd spent so long carrying everything Alanomy wealth. My pain. My plans. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to trust them. To let them stand with me. I clapped a hand on his shoulder. You're right, I said. From now on, we do this together. The next day, I sat down with Emma and Noah, explaining as much as they could handle. I told them about my past, my fortune, the reasons I'd kept it hidden. They listened, wide-eyed, asking questions that showed how much they'd grown. Are we rich? Noah asked, his voice curious but not greedy. I smiled. You're rich in the ways that matter, love. Family. Strength. The money's just a tool. Emma hugged me, her arms tight. I'm glad you're our grandpa, she said, and I felt tears prick my eyes. Claire's lawyer backed off after Linda sent a cease and desist letter. But I knew it was only a pause. Claire was still out there, regrouping, planning her next move. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had David, Emma, Noah, Sarah, even Margaret in my corner. We were a family, stronger than ever. And no matter what Claire threw at us, we'd face it together. The months that followed were a slow climb towards something resembling peace. David and Sarah grew closer, their relationship a quiet anchor for the kids. Emma started calling her Miss Sarah, a small sign of trust that made my heart swell. Noah built a model rocket with her, the two of them laughing in the backyard as it soared into the sky. I watched from the porch, a glass of iced tea in my hand, feeling the weight of the past year start to lift. Claire's visits continued, but they were different now, guarded, careful, like she knew she was on thin ice. She didn't mention the money again, and her lawyer stayed silent. But I wasn't naive. I kept my investigator on retainer, my accounts locked tight. One evening, David asked me to join him and the kids for a family meeting. It was a first, and it caught me off guard. We sat in the living room, the kids on the couch, David in his old armchair, me in a borrowed chair from the dining room. The folder from that fateful dinner sat on the coffee table, a silent reminder of how far we'd come. I've been thinking, David said, his voice steady. About what you said, Dad. About the money. About family. I want us to start fresh. No more secrets. No more fighting. Just us. Together. Emma spoke up, her voice hesitant but clear. I want Mom to be part of it. But I don't want her to hurt us again. Noah nodded, his eyes serious. She's got to prove she's different, he said. I looked at them, these kids who'd grown up too fast, and felt a surge of pride. They were stronger than I'd been at their age, wiser than I'd given them credit for. David looked at me, waiting for my input. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I think you're right, I said. We can't erase the past, but we can build something new. Claire gets a chance, but only if she earns it. David nodded, a small smile breaking through. I'm going to talk to her, he said. Set some ground rules. If she wants to be part of this family, she has to respect all of us. I clapped a hand on his shoulder, feeling the strength in him, the man he'd become. You've got this, I said. He smiled, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were truly on the same team. Claire's next visit was different. She arrived with no agenda, no hidden motives at least, none I could see. She sat with the kids, listened to their stories, laughed at their jokes. David watched, his eyes cautious but open. I stayed in the background, my presence a quiet reminder of the line she couldn't cross. When she left, she thanked me, her voice soft but sincere. I know I don't deserve your trust, George, she said, but I'm trying. I nodded, not ready to forgive, but willing to let her try. Keep trying, I said. That's all I ask. The seasons changed, and so did we. David proposed to Sarah in the spring. A quiet moment in the backyard with the kids cheering. Emma was her bridesmaid, Noah her ring bearer, and I walked her down the aisle, my chest tight with emotion. Claire was there, sitting in the back, her face unreadable but calm. She didn't make a scene, didn't try to steal the spotlight. It was the first time I saw her as something other than a threat, and it gave me hope not for her, but for the family we were rebuilding. I spent my days giving back, setting up scholarships for kids like I'd been, funding community projects, teaching Noah about the business I'd built. He had a sharp mind, a hunger to learn, and I saw a bit of myself in him. Emma found her passion in art, her sketches filling the walls of my house. David and Sarah bought a new place, closer to me, and we had dinner every Sunday. The table full of laughter instead of tension. Claire was there sometimes, always on her best behavior, but I never fully trusted her. Redemption is a long road, and she was only at the start. One night, alone in my study, I looked at the old photo of David and his mother at the lake. I traced her face, missing her more than ever. We're okay, I whispered, hoping she could hear me. I'd fought for this family, not with fists like my father, but with truth, with love, with everything I had. I'd made mistakes, kept secrets too long, sought revenge when I should have sought healing. But I'd learned, and so had they. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Margaret, her voice warm. You did good, George, she said. They're going to be all right. I smiled, the weight of the past finally easing. Yeah, I said. We all are. I hung up, looking out at the night sky, the stars bright and endless. The fight wasn't over. Life never stops testing you, but for now, we were whole. And that was enough.